Hey there, gang. This is White Panther coming to you from Tucson, Arizona with episode 14. Yes, 14 of our video series Inside the Panther's Lair. Today we're going to talk about a song called She Lets Me. I have been sitting around on one particular day just amazed at all the little things that baby girl lets me do for her. She had been through so much, and the fact that she still left room in her heart to let me sneak on inside is just says a lot about her character. Anyway, was not quite in full-blown songwriting mode at the time that I laid this one down, even though I had already written a couple for her at that point. I was still writing some poetry on a fairly regular basis, and just wrote a little piece called She Lets Me. I had posted it up on Facebook and up on Yahoo, and one of my friends from up in the Seattle area had read it and said, "Oh my goodness, I can so hear you setting that to music." And all I can say is it wasn't but a couple of minutes before I went back and reread the poem that I had written and let it, as I always say, bounce around in my head for a while, and next thing you know, out it comes. I had sung this song on a fairly regular basis on karaoke nights, a cappella. And there was something about the harmonic notes that were just hiding there, waiting to come out, that really seemed to catch people's ears. So this song also happens to be the song that I ultimately wound up recording the first time I stepped into the studio. Now, when I went into the studio, I had planned on recording, if you read my most recent Facebook post, you'll understand why I'm saying it this way. There was the other song, the second song that I had written for her, that was written at an express oil change franchise here in Tucson. You guys know who you are. And I had gone into the studio. It was my first experience. Sat down with Steve at the piano and gave him an idea of what I wanted to do. And I was singing so badly and so far off key. When you ultimately hear the song that I did initially try to do first, you'll understand why it might have been a little difficult, especially in our first session, for him to pick up on exactly what I was hearing in my head. We hadn't yet done the Vulcan mind meld. But we spent about 10 or 15 minutes desperately trying for me to get him to understand what I was looking for musically. We had yet to have our Days of Thunder moment. And finally said, you know what, there's one where the melody is a little simpler that I think might be a little easier to go with. And within the first 2 or 3 lines of the song, he immediately picked it up and said, why don't we step away from the piano? We'll just get some basic guitar strums down and see where it goes. And the first track he laid down was just some simple strums and the chord progression, and next thing I know it, he's picking away and putting literally just the right feel behind it. We took a step back, put down the drum track, and then it kind of took on a life of its own. As if being in the recording studio for the first time was not daunting enough, and I didn't feel inadequate enough, Steve was then kind enough to let me, no pun intended there, to let me do 3 separate takes, and he thought that, okay, this is your first time, you're a little nervous, we'll take bits and pieces of the multiple recordings and stitch them together and get it as close to what you want it as we can. And despite his best masterful efforts at copying, cutting, pasting, splicing, you name it, it really was just an ugly piece of vocal work. He then said, well, we're going to spend a little more time on this. He happened to have his laptop handy with a piece of tuning software called Melodyne, and he showed me how he was able to bring my vocals in and isolate individual phrases and syllables, and literally just grab my vocals that were supposed to be up here and somehow landed somewhere around down here, just nudge them up one little bit at a time until they kind of fell into place. When you do listen to the vocals on this one, you will hear the artifacts that are left behind by auto-tune. And I won't say that I'm proud of them. Definitely proud of the song, definitely proud of the message that it conveys, but I left them there for the simple reason that once I lay something down, and I start sharing it with people, I want to let it be what it was. It's also a very powerful reminder of the first step that I took into the recording process. And listening to some of my more recent stuff, as much fun and as fantastic a job as was done with the first set of recordings, I hear what I'm able to do now, even without George's magic. And it is so far above and beyond what I initially brought into the studio. And anyway, it was a humbling experience, and it keeps me humble. Every time I lay down something and I think, wow, this is really awesome, I stop and think back to remember the, and thank you for rescuing me from this, Steve, the train wreck that was my first recording session. But if we can look past the mechanics and the technical difficulties in actually getting this recording down, and all of them were squarely right here. They were all me. The folks at the studio, and in particular the engineer and musician Steve, were absolutely phenomenal in making my first session absolutely memorable and giving me the fever, or as George says, fever, for doing what I do. None of it would be possible without the inspiration that this amazing woman gives me on a daily basis. And I am, technical glitches and imperfections aside, I really almost could not be prouder of my first production. So without any further ado, this is White Panther, as always, telling you to keep music in your heart. May God bless you and enjoy She Lets Me.
Strong enough to tackle her most difficult of days, and when the sun goes down she'll walk through my front door. She'll lean down and kiss my cheek in her most innocent of ways, and when I hold her close I don't need nothing more. And she lets me take her in my arms, and she lets me get swept up in her charms, and she lets me in a way you'd never know. She lets me tell her that I love her so. She flashes you her smile from across a crowded room, and you just can't help but wear a smile yourself. She can walk across the field and wildflowers start to bloom. All your doubts and fears jump right back on the shelf. And she lets me take her in my arms, and she lets me get swept up in her charms, and she lets me in a way you'd never know. She lets me tell her that I love her so. It's only been a short while that I've had this girl around, and I thank the Lord on each and every day. I was feeling awful lost, thanks to her I'm finally found. I wanna show I love her each and every way. And she lets me take her in my arms, and she lets me get swept up in her charms, and she lets me in a way you'd never know. She lets me tell her